Hello and welcome to this installation video for the new NEXT 300 operator. My name is David Richardson from Label UK. I'm Technical Manager. This is my colleague.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Andrea Negri. I'm from Label SPA. I'm one of the owners and I'm in charge of R&D organization.
The first part of this training video will be to show you how to install just a single operator. We'll show you how to install what the correct height's got to be, how to program the operator, how to adjust the spring and the cam. The second part of this training video will be to show you how to install a double pair of operators on a double door set. The most important thing that you need to know is that when you're installing an operator, that the door must be free swinging. You can't have any tight spots on the door. You can't have it tight down the seal. You can't have it dragging on the floor. And with this particular door set, we've got a transom closer in there. That's got a dummy transom closer in, because if you're doing an install on an existing set of doors, that will have a non-hold open or hold open transom closer on, and it's no good just drilling it out and letting all the oil come out thinking it's going to be free swinging. It's not. You have to fit a dummy transom closer. When you fitted a dummy transom closer and you've adjusted the door, you might have to lift it up slightly on the pivots. You might have to heel and toe the glass. Make sure it's free swinging before you go any further, before you attach the actual unit. The specification for the NEXT 300 is that the length of the actual operator is 600 mm. The depth of the operator is 125 mm and the width of the operator is 75 mm. If we remove the cover, you'll see inside the operator there's an aluminium casing. Inside that casing you'll find there's a compression spring. You adjust the compression spring by the screw there. That compression spring is better than a clockwork spring because it gives even pressure all the way along. You also have a power supply. This power supply will give you 1 amp of power for all your accessories. That includes all your locks as well. The lock output for this particular unit can give you a 12 or 24 volt output. So to power all different types of locks. This is an articulated arm. The articulated arm will push the door open, or push arm. On the double door set that you'll see, you'll find that there's a slide arm on there as well. The slide arm will pull the door open. The reveal that the slide arm will do is 120 to 130 mm. If you want a bigger reveal than that, when the door is opening inwards, you'd use a specialised arm, such as a reveal arm which will do 300 mm, and that will pull the door open.
When you receive the NEXT 300, inside the box you find the operator and 2 QR codes. One is for the installer and one is for the final user. The first step you need to install the NEXT 300 is to disassemble the operator to be able to fix the back plate on the wall. The first screw you need to remove is the 2 that fix the cover. This screw is just in one side. Then you are able to remove the cover completely. Here is the operator. The operator is made by 2 components basically, electronic board and mechanical part. We have to remove both to fix the back plate to the wall. To remove the mechanical part, you have 4 screws here. So the key you can remove 1, 2, 3, and 4. Be careful that the connector is removed from the electronic part. This is the mechanical part. The electronic part, before removing, you have to remove this connector that is fixed on the side switch. Then you have two screws here. Not remove completely, but just untie it for one turn. It's enough. Then you slide to the right and take out. So now the backplate is free from the component. You just need to remove the side cover by the two screws in one side and in the other side. So now the backplate is ready to be installed.
Once you have disassembled the operator, you need to mount the actual operator on the door. First off, you mount the backplate, but if you look in the instruction manual, you'll find there's a paper template of how to place onto the actual bulkhead of the operator to know exactly where the actual mounting plate goes. On that mounting plate drawing, it will show you that the end of the actual mounting plate is in line with the center of the pivot point. And if you're not using any extensions on this particular unit, you will need just 7mm from the underneath of the actual mounting plate to the top of the door. It's important that it's always the top of the door, not the top of the actual door frame. If you've got architrave around the door section, you've got various options there. The standard extensions which we get, extension A is 25mm, extension B is 50mm, and extension C is 75mm. You can add these to the standard knuckle of the arm. This particular door set is going to have an articulated arm, so it's pushing the door open like so. It is very important that you always keep the actual base plate level, perfectly vertical, perfectly horizontal. Please use a spirit level to make sure that when you're mounting it, it is perfectly level. The reason being, if this was going to be a slide arm, and the slide arm opens inwards, if you was leaning back or leaning at an angle like that, the arm would come out of the track as the door opens. Or if it was leaning at an angle like that, as the door opens, it will go and push into the track to make it very tight when it fully opens and cause stiffness. So it's always important to make sure that that is perfectly level. When you receive the actual operator as well, you will get some packers to go behind it. You'll have 3 packers, a 1mm, 2mm and 3mm, which will be the full length of that. The packers go between the actual wall and the plate. So you can put the packers in between there and then screw it up, put your spirit level on the actual plate itself to make sure it's perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal. When fixing the plate, please make sure the screws that you use are countersink and make sure they are flush or slightly inset. You don't want them proud, because if they're proud, it's going to push the gearbox out and it won't sit on the plate properly. Once the screws are all fixed and you've got a stable base and you're happy that it's perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal, next is to mount the actual motor gearbox. Put 2 of the bottom screws in first, only a couple of threads, because this is where the actual motor is going to go. With the motor gearbox, it's important you take the plastic shroud off at the bottom of the actual unit itself, because you are going to actually drop this onto the 2 screws on the fixing plate. If that plastic was on, you wouldn't be able to do it, it will catch. So you lift it up, drop it on, just a little pinch, secure it, add the other 2 screws. Nicely tighten them up. Then add your plastic plate. Okay. Once the plastic plate's on, you now need to preload the spring. And to do that, you'd need a 6mm Allen key. Your spring gauge is on there. You need to preload the spring roughly 1/3. Add the Allen key into the screw and start to wind it. You'll see there's a green mark. That's telling you where the spring is. And I'm going to put it to about the 4th line. Once you've preloaded the spring to its 1/3, you now need to adjust the actual cam inside there, but more importantly, you need to put the arm on as well. So the arm we're going to use today on this particular door set is an articulated arm, okay, or push arm. It will do from 0 to 350mm reveal. So basically it's going to push the door open. Before we begin, we need to make 2 things clear. Pull that cap down there. You see the cam inside of the actual operator. There's 3 screws in that cam. The centre screw does not get touched. It's a locking screw only to stop the screws from falling out basically. So you use a 4mm Allen key. Put inside, find the Allen key, which is a 4mm, unwind it till you can't go any further because it stops on the middle screw. Same with the other one, unwind it till it stops on the middle screw. Now, you can put the arm in the knuckle to engage it. You can push it that way, it will stop. You can push it that way, it will stop. When it stops like that, you remove the arm and then you line it up. You'll see there's a blue mark there and a red mark there. The blue mark is from a reveal of 0 to 50mm. The red mark is from a reveal from 50mm to 350mm. And when you put engage the arm, you need to be slightly away from the actual, in this case, the blue mark, just slightly over it. Because when you adjust the cam with the 2 screws, it will bring it in line and parallel with the blue mark. So I'll now engage the arm just past the blue mark. With a 6mm Allen key, tighten it up. And pinch it. Remove the Allen key, and now I need to adjust the cam inside till the edge of the actual arm lines up with the blue mark, becomes parallel. So I turn the adjusting screw, in this case it's on the right hand side, till it lines up with the blue mark. Then lock it off with the one closest to the pivot point. Now that's adjusted. So when mounting the articulated arm bracket onto the door, from the pivot point to the centre where the bracket is 400mm. Then from the top of the door leaf, which is the actual top of the door leaf, to where the fixing holes are, is 29mm. So when your bracket's on the door, put your articulated arm like that. You've got 4 screws. You're going to put the first 3 screws in through the slides, then tighten them up slowly, not all the way, so they're slightly loose. Then push the arm by about 5mm and lock it off. Push the door open and hold the door, because at this moment in time the actual motor and spring isn't being controlled by the electronics, so the door can slam shut. Tighten them up, allow the door to close, and now you can add the electronics board by simply, with the screw there, push down across, 4mm Allen key, pinch, pinch, plug the motor lead in, and now if you push the door open, You've got control as the door closes. When you've got the arm set and you're happy with it, now you might need to adjust the spring of the actual unit itself. Even though you've already adjusted it by 1/3, it might depend on the leaf weight of the door. That means to say how heavy the door leaf is. It might be quite wide as well. The leaf weight might be 1.4, might be 1 meter. Or it might be in a windy environment or different conditions. It might be a light door, might be a single glaze, double glaze. So you have to adjust the spring accordingly to the environment. And to adjust the spring, 6mm Allen key, make sure you don't touch any of the components on the board. Clockwise puts more pressure on the spring. I'm just going to exaggerate this now. Putting more pressure on the spring so it winds the little green mark up into your different notches and locations. What you can't have is that when your door is fully open, that the green mark goes past its maximum limit. So if we push the door now, you'll be able to see. Can I put it open? And it's nowhere near the actual maximum mark. When you've connected the power supply, put your clip back on to cover the socket. Now you can add the end caps. So we're going to add the end caps to this one. Lock it off. And we're just going to drag the safety sensor cable along. There's plenty of room. Put your safety sensor cables or any cables through the unit. Because you have a channel that runs at the top and a channel that runs at the bottom. We're going to connect this end cap this side. But first, we're going to insert the encapsulated plug, which is your 230, into the power supply. Add the other end cap. Lock it down. And insert the actual toggle switch as per instructions in the instruction manual. At this moment in time, we're not going to plug the safety sensors in. We can plug the safety sensors in later, because if you're new to a Lebel product or you haven't fitted one of these before, just get the unit working in the basic mode and then you can start adding different components. Because if it doesn't work, it's the last component that's caused you the issue. So now you've got that lead for your TNFC, and the TNFC needs to be plugged in to that small port there by simply just plugging that in there. So now you'll be able to program off the TNFC.
Now we have to set up the door with the main power on. So when the power on coming, you can see in this case is the TNFC selector flashing for a few seconds, and when the wait signal is ended, means that everything is ready to be set. You can also check on the supply power that the green LED is on. Now the setup is just to move the door. So the sensor is not connected yet. We prefer this way because we can check that the mechanisms work fine, the door open and closed by motor, and then we can pass to the next step, that is the connection of the sensor. To set up the door on the TNFC, you have to push and hold down for a few seconds the central push button, the set push button. The selector asks you the technical code. Technical code is something very important because it's the only code that permits you to enter and to change technical things. For safety reasons, technical things is very important, so it's mandatory in some way that you change the password and keep the password just for you. In this case, is the standard password. It's 10 digits every time. When you enter in the programming mode, you have a scrolling text with a number in front of the text, is from 1 to 6. The first is the setup. That is exactly what we need to do now. So, pushing the setup, the door emit a sound, and that is correct, so the door is completely stopped and is ready to choose what kind of setup you have to do. If the operator is brand new, you have to perform a full setup. So you have to push the B push button, if you see the arrow when it's full. Selector start to ask you some selection that you have to choose. So the S1, now we start to set up in the standard way, means that you can scroll with the A push button all the function up to the end. When you arrive at the end, selector said that the operator is ready for setup and press this push button. Setup text appear and the operator start to open slowly at this time, because the operator doesn't know the travel distance of this door. So it starts to learn the distance with a safety speed. Of course, you need on the door a mechanical hand stop, or on the floor or on the wall, that give the final stop at the movement. When the operator reaches the end of the travel, it stops. A long sound is made by the operator, and the door closes with a spring, in this case, because it's the standard setup. And close completely. So now the operator is ready to be operated, ready to open. To try to open the door, you can use the small right push button here on the electronic board, pushing that, and the door open at the right speed, at the default speed set by the selector, and close against the default speed set on the electronics. So basically now the operator is ready to be used. Okay, now we can try to change some function by TNFC, pushing again the center push button, same as at the setup, hold down for a few seconds, scrolling text appears again, but instead, no, first the technical password, of course, because if not, we are not able to change anything. Instead of the 1, with the B push button, we go on the next function, that is number 2, and this function and potentiometer. Entering the function by push button A. Then here we have a function on accessing the function by push button C and accessing the potentiometer by push button A. For instance, if you want to change opening speed is the first potentiometer. Now is 75%, means with the push button B and D, we can increase with the D and decrease with the B. If we set at very low speed, say 5%, 4%, we can see that opening the door, speed is changed. The parameter change every time that the door is fully closed or fully open. Also, if you change during the running of the door, the system acquires the changing, and when the door is finished the travel in opening or in closing, the new data is downloaded on the software. So this is just an example. For the function, potentiometer, it's a 50 potentiometer, virtual potentiometer. For the function, we have to use the push button C, going up. F01 is the first, F02 is the second. F02, for instance, means electrolock active. So if we place on the function by push button D, or off again with B, but if we place on, the electrolock is driven by the operator. For all the other functions, we have 80 functions in total, and the 50 potentiometer, you can read the manual. Okay, so now we finished to install the single door, single unit with the articulated arm. We can show you now how set a double door with the sliding arm.
Now we're going to show you how to install a double door set with the next 300. It's 2 single operators with an infill panel in between. So you can run all your cable runs in between the infill panels if you want to. The step is basically the same as doing a single door, but first off you have to insert the bolts there and there to hold the actual motor gearbox. Please remember that the motor gearbox is always on the side of the pivot point. So now we're going to put the screws in to take the gearbox. Same as before. Put a couple of threads on. Have your gearbox. Please remember the gearbox always goes on the side of the pivot point. Get it in place, just a small pinch on the bolt. Then add the other 2 bolts at the top. Tighten. So these are the main fixing bolts for your motor gearbox, which takes all the pressure of the door moving on the arm, which is trying to force the unit off the wall. And then we'll do the same for the other one as well. So when both motor gearboxes are installed, you need to adjust the spring to that 1/3 of tension. That's 1/3 of the tension of the spring, which is roughly around about the 4th notch or mark. Okay, on both of them. I'm going to replace the plastic cover, the actual arm, and the same on the other units as well. So now we add the slide arm. After you've put 1/3 of the spring tension on, attach the slide arm loosely and find where it stops that side, where it stops that side. You'll be able to feel it straight away. So as it stops towards the pivot point, you then remove the arm and attach the arm closest to the edge of the door, or the closest spline to that, and then lock it up with your 6mm Allen key. And you do the same with the other unit, but if we look at the other unit, you find where it stops. Don't do it there, towards the back of the pivot point. Remove the arm and find the closest spline to its closed point. So my closest spline is there on this particular unit, but I can't get any further than that. So that's where it is, so that's where it's going to be locked up. So now you adjust your setting screw. The setting screw is with your 4mm Allen key. You turn and you notice the arm is going in till it touches the actual wall. And then move across one to the back edge of the other screw, which is on this side of the pivot, and tighten it up. That unit is set. Move across to the other side, adjust the setting screw on this side, so it pushes it onto the door frame, like so, and then go into the other side and lock it up, the locking screw. Please remember, put the caps on to stop any dirt getting in. And now you need to add the power supply. So the power supply, push along, locks in place, tighten up, and connect the motor lead. Do the same to the other one. Slide, locks in place, tightens up, connect the motor lead. Now you can add the slide rail. Now you have your rails attached to the doors. It is very important when you do attach your rails that they're not leaning like that or leaning like that, because they have to be perfectly horizontal. Because if they're leaning like that, as the door opens, it's going to get tighter and tighter into the rail as it slides along. If it was leaning like that, as the door opens, it'll get further and further out of the rail, and there's a possibility that you could pop it out of the actual rail itself. Very unlikely, but there's a possibility. The same also applies to the actual unit itself. The unit itself, when you've mounted all these, it must be perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal. And you have some shims with the unit as well, remember that. So you can put in the back of the back plate, so you can pack it up. Because you can't have the unit leaning like that, or you can't have the unit leaning like that. Because if it is, the same thing will happen with the actual slide rail. It will either lift up, or it will go down into the rail to make it tight. Once you've got it all set, once you've got all these set, you need to look at your dip switches over on this secondary unit. So this is the main, this is the secondary. This door will open first, this door will open second. This door will close first, this door will close second. To make that the secondary unit, you'll notice there's two dip switches on the actual board itself. These two dip switches there. Dip switch number 1 needs to be on. This makes this the secondary unit. When the dip switch is on, you can plug in your synchronized cable. It plugs into that port there. And on the main unit, you plug into the J2 port on the main unit. These units, when powered up, will now be synchronized by the main operator. So the main operator controls the secondary operator. We're now going to plug in the 230 volts, or your main power supply, into there, and then we're going to switch on.
So now we have a new pair of door of the X300 configured as a primary and secondary door, and we are looking now how it's possible easily to set up the door in a few minutes. When you turn on the power, the graphic display starts to connect both doors from the same cable, and when you arrive in the main page that shows you the program work on the door usually, you can enter in programming mode by holding down the set push button. After a few seconds, 8 icons appears, and you have to choose the first on the left, on the top row, that is related to the setup. With the push button of the winter opening, you enter in the setup. The operator asks you the technical password, so you have to digit your personal technical password. And then you have to choose, if the operator is brand new, full setup mode. So press F1 for full setup mode. Again, the operator shows you some information that need to be set up. And the first one is the S01, and you have to select if it's a double door with master and slave or a single door. We have a double door. So we set on. S2 is related to the lock function. So if you have electric lock installed on the site, we don't have any electric lock now, so we leave off. To push on or off, it's enough to press F1 or F3. We leave off at this moment. S4 is related to battery pack. We don't have any battery extension here, so we leave it off again. Here we have a safety sensor in both sides, opening and closing. So we have to set up to tell at the software, at the door, that 4 sensors is connected on the operator. So on S05, you set on, because it's used, and this is the safety sensor for closing. S06 is for the opening, you place against in on, and then you have the test. If you have the sensor that have integrated the test for the safety, like in this case, you have to set on for both safety in opening and safety in closing. S9 is for this kind of sensor still off. S10 is other function that is not important now. S11 is the function that gives you the possibility to drive the door by the selector or by the key switch. In this case, because we want to use the digital selector, we set on. After that is just for the spring. The main function that you have to set is this. When you arrive at the end, the door operator is ready to set up. You have to press for the last time the winter opening push button, and the primary operator starts to open slowly. It's moving slowly until find the mechanical stop on the door. In this case, the mechanical stop is integrated on the rail. When the door, in a few seconds, reach the end stop, the mechanical end stop, store the travel distance, like in this moment, you can hear an extended beep and a short series of beep because the secondary door starts to open. The primary door still open until the secondary door finish the setup and close again. The secondary door automatically acquire all the information that we set by digital selector, have the setup in the same way, and when it's finished, again, you hear a long sound. Now the door have finished the setup, so the secondary door closes as a first, and the primary door closes as a second. When the door is closed, like now, we can operate the door now by the push button or by sensor or by any kind of input you can connect. Okay. So the operator is ready to be used at the moment with safety sensor set in the right way. After that, once that you check that everything is okay, with the second icon, just for show you something about the digital selector, you can choose to change switches and potentiometer in the same way by pressing F2 on the top left. You scroll all the functions that is inside. There's many functions. We arrive up to 80 functions available. With on and off, you can change the state of the function. And for the potentiometer, you can come back in the middle with the winter push button. You go down, and also here you can scroll all the potentiometer we have, that is 50. For instance, if you want to change the opening speed, P01 is the potentiometer related to the opening speed. With the two push button on the right, you can increase up to 100% or decrease the speed of the door. In this case, I place a very low speed, and you can check by pushing the button that the opening speed of the primary door is very low, as set on the digital selector. Now, we come back on the 70% speed, that is the full value, and the speed in opening, we come back at 75%. We have also some utility areas on the digital selector that help to install the door sometimes. The first one is the real-time input check. So pressing and hold down F2 for a few seconds, a screen like this appears, and we have a lot of icons. Every icon is related to an hardware input. So for instance, this is the external radar, this is the safety in opening, safety in closing, and so on. So you can check in real time by activating the sensor, you can see here, or the safety sensor, that the device connected on the door work in the right way. You have the complete checking of the input of the primary door and the secondary door with the same selector in the same way. To change from primary to the secondary, you have to push the F3 push button on the top right, an S appear on the corner, and these icons now is related to the secondary door, and it works exactly the same. So when an input is on, like here, you can see the icon that come back, that lighting. Another area that can help in the installation time is this one. By pressing and hold down the winter push button for a few seconds, we have some information about the door. So the serial number, the partial cycle of the door, and the total cycle of the door. These two counters work exactly the same as a car. So the total cycle we never reset. There's no way to reset. The partial cycle you can reset every service time. Then you have some information about the release of the microcontroller inside the operator and identification number. There's also another area that is accessible from this point, that is the error area. By pushing F1, you have a list of the last 5 error events. In this case, we don't have any fault that happened, but in case we have a fault, the fault is stored in the memory, and when you approach the door to check what happened, you can see a code with a minimum text that explains you the error.
This is our Next 300 double door with an infill. They're on slide arms at the moment. The infill part is a new piece for us because you can see it's very, very smart, very sleek design. If we remove the cover of one unit and the cover of the other unit, you've got an infill piece between the two. Screw in there to undo it, to keep it secure. A screw in there. Undo that one. Then pull. And you can see, if you've got two units together, you can hide all your cable in there. You could put an actual sensor on the cover if it was opening the other way. And you can see it's a far better infill piece because you've got two end caps with shoulders on. So they both sit on nicely together. I'd like to show you today how to install an Optex OA Edge safety sensor onto our door leaf with the Next 300. Go on the QR code. From that QR code you'll see the installation manual, and you also see a colour-coded wiring diagram of the actual sensor itself and where the wires go into the unit. When you've wired it all up and you've set any of your sensors up, you need to switch on the function switches in the actual unit, because otherwise you might set the sensors up, they won't do anything unless you switched on the function switches. And the function switches, you can either go into the NFC or on the app or on your programmer. And the function switches, you'll find that the F11, F12 are your opening and closing safety sensor, F13 and 14 are your test. Your test on a safety sensor is that before the door opens, it will send a signal to the actual safety sensor to say, are you okay? The sensor will then send a signal back to say yes, allow the door to open at normal speed. And also when the door starts to close, it will send a signal to the sensor, and the sensor will send a signal back saying yes, I'm okay. And the door closed, whatever you've set it at. But if there's an issue, what will happen is that as the door starts to open or as the door goes to open, and let's say there's a fault on the safety sensor or whatever, it will beep once and go into a creep mode in a safe, controlled manner. If it's on the closing side, as it starts to close and it's going to close, it will beep twice and close in a controlled, safe manner. You have a main and secondary sensor on this particular door set. When installing the actual sensor itself, the main sensor needs to be on the side of the operator. That's mainly for the cable run from the operator all the way around to the sensor. Because you don't want to go through the door if you can help it and have it on the other side. You always want to keep it on this side if you can. Then you have the secondary unit on the other side, and you'll drill just a small hole there to run a link cable through from the main to the secondary. With this particular sensor, the TX is always closest to the leading edge of the door. The important thing is that from the leading edge of the door to the actual module, you need no more than 70 mil. Okay? If you're over 70 mil, what we'll do, the safety beam itself won't see the edge of the door. So you need it within 70 mil of that distance so you can see the edge of the door, because this is the danger zone. It's all danger, but this is the main danger zone that gives the most force or impact. When you've got that set to within 70 mil of the door, you go on the other side and you fit your other safety sensor. The other safety sensor would also be within 70 mil of the edge of the door. It is important that the TX is always down this side, because what happens is that one beam goes down there straight. These two lenses will put another 3 beams going that way. So it's in a bit of a fan. You'll notice there's a number of dip switches. You've got a bank of 8 and a bank of 4. So the basic dip switch setting to get you started is dip switches 1, 3 and 7 on the bank of 8, which is A bank. It lifts the actual sensor itself up off the floor by another 100 mil, because what happens is that when you set the sensor up, the sensor will bounce to the floor and then come back again and then set its own height. But if you put dip switch 1 on, it lifts it up another 100 mil off its original 100 mil. So it'll be 250 mil off the floor. So that means to say any debris on the floor, anything blown around, it's not going to pick it up. You might get snow, etc., etc. Dip switch 3, is immunity. That's any vibrations on the door, anything blown around, anything like that. It stops any false activations of the door, or helps to prevent false activations of the door. And dip switch 7 is actually for your monitoring of your safety sensor. This particular door, this is your closing face. On the bank of 4, you'd normally put dip switch 4 on the closing face only, because the sensor can't say which is the closing face or the opening face until you put dip switch 4 on. Dip switch 4, it's important that it's always the closing face that your dip switch 4 on the bank of 4 is on. Because if you do it the other way around, the sensor would work the other way around. All right, so the closing face, I must stress, is dip switch 4 on the bank of 4. This is the other side of the operator. This is the opening face of the door. This is where you fit your secondary unit. The secondary unit has only 4 dip switches on it. Because this is the opening face, remember the TX is always close to the leading edge. No more from the leading edge to the actual edge of the module, no more than 70 mil, because you've got to give the coverage of this part of the door, because this is the main danger zone. This is very low danger zone, but it's all danger zone. So, as the door's opening and closing, at the moment you don't need to put any dip switches on. The only time you might have to put some dip switches on is if you've got a wall or a barrier on the hinge side, so the door opens up onto a wall or barrier. You might need to switch on dip switch 1, which will then lift up the safety sensor a little bit more off the floor, so it sees the wall or barrier later. Or if it's really, really tight, you might have to switch on dip switch 2. That knocks 2 of the beams off closest to the leading edge. I don't recommend that. Back on the main side of the actual door leaf itself, where the operator is, when you've powered the unit up, you'll have your dip switches on, which is 1, 3 and 7, which is your basic setup. And dip switch 4, because this is now the closing face. When it's the closing face, remember dip switch 4 on the bank of 4 is on. that depicts the closing face of the actual sensor itself. When you've done that, there's a dip switch underneath there, a function switch, which you press and hold, and the little LED will go out. When it's out, step right back. It'll start to learn. If it's learned correctly, it'll be solid green, which it is now. But normally what happens on the first install is that it will flash orange, red, orange, red, orange, red. If that happens, just press it once, don't keep your finger on it, just press it once, it'll relearn and it will go solid green. Once it's solid green, it's found its height off the floor because you've set your dip switches, and give it an activation. You might find that when the door is opening or closing, you'll have to adjust the rake to suit because you're going to use a test box. And the test box is the industry standard. We put the test box on the closing face of the door. We'll activate the door. That door should, as it closes, should stop and reopen within 200 mil of the test box. If it doesn't do that, it's failed the test. There's two colours for that test box, a grey and a black, and you should try both of those. So the door's closing, 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 it's reopened. So it's reopened, and we try it with the black, because there's two contrasting colours there. You'll see when the sensor picks the test box up, the little LED indicator light will change colour. It will go orange. That means to say the closing safety sensor has been activated. We move that out of the way, and the door will close fully. You'll have to adjust that. If you have to adjust it, you'll find that there's a screw just there, and all you do, clockwise, adjust the angle outwards, anti-clockwise, adjust the angle inwards. So you need to get that right. If we flick this unit round to go to the other side, this is the opening side of the door leaf itself. If we activate the door leaf, we have the test box at the opening point. You'll notice it will stop before the test box. The test box is more than 100 mil, so I need to do a slight adjustment on that. I'll just move the test box out of the way to allow the door to open fully. When it's closed, I'll adjust it. I'll adjust the rake by that screw. And then I'll try it again. You've got to remember that when you use a test box, you use the two different contrasting colours. It's important. So I'm adjusting the rake. As I'm adjusting it, it's bringing it a bit closer into the door leaf itself. I don't need to reset it. I'll put the test box there. I'll activate the door. And that's about right, within about 200 mil. If it sees the box, it will stop. Or if it sees anybody there, it will stop, and then when they're moved out of the way, the door will then creep open in a safe, controlled manner. Then close. But let's just say somebody puts something in the way of the actual unit itself. And let's just say it's a box, or it could be anything really. It's obstructing the actual door leaf itself. I'll put that there. I'll activate the door. The door will stand there for 30 seconds. Now at the end of the 30 seconds, if that object is not removed, the door will then reclose, because you don't want to be called out. If you're an engineer, you don't want to be called out because the door isn't opening fully and it's just standing there for about 30 seconds and closing again, or the door is standing open. So we put it into the function of the actual unit itself. It will stand there for 30 seconds and then reclose. So at least you can use the door. And the door will start to close. If you remove the object now and activate, the door will open fully to its parameters. So the important things to remember when fitting an Optec safety sensor, the TX is always on the leading edge of the door. The TX module inside the case should be no more than 70mm from the edge of the door. And then adjust your rake angle to suit the test box. It has to stop within 200mm or not encroach that 200mm of the test box. And test it in various places like I've just showed you. If the door opens up onto a wall or barrier, you might need to adjust your dip switch number 1. You've switched that on so it lifts it up a little bit more off the floor, so it sees the actual wall or barrier later. If I demonstrate, it will see the wall or barrier. We have in the test box as the wall. And then you need to go into your programmer or your program functions, which is PO3, potentiometer pots, and you need to adjust the potentiometer pot to suit where your sensor is seeing the actual wall or barrier. You adjust it by going higher or even lower, but normally higher. So it's called wall blanking. So it'll get to a point where the door will open, it'll see the wall, and then, because you've adjusted your percentage, it will then go into a creep safe mode to open fully onto the actual wall. With the Optec safety sensor, if you're fitting onto a double door set, it is important that you change the frequency from the two main sensors, because both sensors work on the same frequency. So if the door is closing, the beams are going to be overlapping, and that will give problems to the actual safety sensor. It'll give false activations or false readings. So what you can do is then switch on your dip switch number 2 on your bank of 8, which is a frequency setting, put one of those on one of the mains, and one off on the other main. So then when the beams overlap, they don't interfere with one another. Thank you for watching this installation video for the Next 300.
If you have any other technical questions, please call Label.